Prisons in most places are racially segregated, not by staff, but by the prisoners themselves. There is pressure to find a group so that you will not be isolated and vulnerable. It's part of human nature to look to people who look like you, and when you join those groups, it could be your life. John Stinson would walk back into a federal court in the Eastern District of California, and the judge would simply read off the charges. Mr. Stinson, you are hereby charged with the following offenses that include conspiracy to participate in a racketeering enterprise, mainly the Aryan Brotherhood, murder in aid of racketeering, and the judge's words would go in one ear and out the other. He had been here before, and who really cares? He's got life anyway. With this new indictment, he could see some of the homies he hasn't seen in a while, converse, joke around, and talk about old times. Nothing matters anymore. The man standing before the federal judge is no longer the man that they called youngster. Now the homies refer to him as Pops. John Stinson, some would say, was a beast and played no games. He lived the life that other people talk about in movies. Prison made, he has risen up the ranks and is respected by his peers or the prisoners around him. Many have feared him over the years, even some of the prison staff. Someday he would be at the top of the food chain. This has been his life since 1981. Concrete and steel. He came in at 26 years old. The streets would never see him again, as he left his mark on the prison system and the victims that were left in his wake. In 1981, youngster would take the life of Alfredo Armijo, a Long Beach area heroin dealer. Murder was just part of his makeup. Alfredo might have been the first, but he certainly would not be the last. On May 9, 2005, the federal government would give youngster, or Pops as he is now called, a death notice, meaning that they were seeking the ultimate penalty in federal court. For the moment, the government wanted his life, but they would later rescind that request in November 2006. They would be happy with just another life sentence for John Youngster Stinson. The government would charge youngster with murdering others and calling shots. In other words, he was one of the shot callers for the Aryan Brotherhood, according to the government. The evidence at trial would allege that he, along with Robert Lee Griffin, were decades-long members and leaders of the Aryan Brotherhood, AB prison gang. Both John Stinson and Griffin were members of the AB's California Council, which governed the affairs of the California faction of the AB and of the AB's three-man California Commission, which had authority over the California Council and all other California AB members. As the judge read off the charges, he would only look on and smile, in a sick way, thanking the federal government again for a trip outside of prison life today. Some men start out young and turn prison into a lifetime affair. The man they once called youngster has and will always be what the public sees in so many prison movies and prison shows. He started out young and will die an old man in prison. In the 1970s, John Youngster Stinson would be at the helm of his own gang in the California Youth Authority. NLR, or the Ride as some call them, were originated as a skinhead gang in the California Youth Authority during the early to mid-1970s, and later established itself as a gang for young white inmates. It was created, as some documents say, by members of the Aryan Brotherhood, the AB, the leading white gang in the California prison system. In the late 1970s or early 1980s, Aryan Brotherhood leader John Stinson began recruiting skinheads incarcerated in the California Youth Authority at the Preston Youth Correctional Facility and at the Youth Training School in Chino to act as a middleman in the AB's criminal operations. The gang did not come to the attention of law enforcement until the early 1990s, by which time authorities in the California DOC began suppressing the Aryan Brotherhood's activities. The Nazi lowriders' position as middlemen for the Aryan Brotherhood, along with the crackdown on the AB, allowed the gang to supplant the Brotherhood as the most prominent white prison gang in California. While maintaining its presence in the prison system, the Nazi lowriders also became a street gang, first in Southern California and later in Central and Northern Cali. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, due to the gang's rapid expansion, links with other white gangs, and highly organized operations, the NLR established themselves as a significant crime group on the West Coast. As opposed to other white criminal gangs in California prisons, the NLR gained a reputation for being very violent. They are labeled as a prison gang by the California DOC. For years, they were strong in numbers in such California communities as Bakersfield, Lancaster, Inland Empire, Roseman, and of course, Orange County. The Nazi part of their name is more a sign of a belief in white supremacy than anti-Semitism, while lowriders is a play on the term used for Hispanic gangs. The gang eventually progressed from being muscle for the AB to a fast-growing gang in their own right. Unlike other white gangs in the U.S., they appeared to be well organized and developed links with other white organizations throughout the West Coast. On January 28, 1999, California prison officials recognized the lowriders as a prison gang. According to the SPLC, despite the NLR's views, Latino last names and Latino wives and girlfriends are okay. But experts say members are supposed to be at least half Caucasian. Youngster aspired to be the boss of someone, and that he became. State prison and the big leagues were in his cards. At 9:00 p.m. on March 28, 1979, Daniel Grajeda called Alfredo Armijo to discuss buying heroin. Armijo was asleep at the time, but his girlfriend Debbie answered the phone and invited Daniel to come over. Daniel and another man, John Stinson, arrived at Armijo's home at 10:00 p.m. Debbie would answer the door, but would not allow Daniel to come in until Stinson returned to the car. She had an eerie feeling that she should not let both men into her house. As Debbie opened the door, Armijo awoke and ran to the door. Daniel, who had one foot in the doorway, drew a gun and pointed it at Armijo and Debbie as they tried to close the door. "Stand back," John would say. "This is a holdup." Stinson was at the door with his own gun, and he and Daniel forced their way into the living room. The men were beating on Alfred as he tried to fight back. Daniel fired his gun once and said, "Give up the dope now." Alfred would freeze in the moment and give up fighting. Alfred and Debbie were then ordered out of the house where neighbors had come out, including Alfred's brother Steve. He would ask, "Why are you doing this to my brother?" "All we want is the dope, that's all," said Daniel. With sirens in the air, Daniel would tell youngster Stinson, "Let's go, the police are coming, bro." Stinson then said, "Should I shoot him? Should I shoot him?" Daniel did not reply. Stinson, who was about to give his life away to prison, was holding on to Armijo, and then he pulled the trigger. Alfred Armijo would fall to the ground, lifeless, taking his last breath. Daniel and Stinson then ran to a car and drove away. His fate sealed, but would it be for the rest of his life? Both Daniel and John Stinson were eventually convicted, and that came with a life sentence on their back. John would walk into the California prison system as a youngster, never to return to society ever again. This was it. This was his life, and the Aryan Brotherhood was his new family. John would live what people see in movies and with violence and loyalty to the gang life. He would become a commissioner of one of the most dangerous gangs ever known in the U.S. prison system, according to the feds. The treacherous world of prison was just beginning. The walls of San Quentin and other prisons would claim the lives of many young men, including the man they once called Youngster. In time, the feds would allege that he would become a commissioner for the AB and that violence was part of his life. According to the feds, the Aryan Brotherhood controlled drug distribution and other illegal activity within portions of the California and federal prison systems and worked to expand its influence over illegal activity conducted outside of prison. It was formed in the California prison system in approximately 1964 by white inmates who wanted to gain power and authority in prison by forming a race-based gang, but has since spread to other prisons. To be considered for AB membership, according to the federal indictment, an inmate must be sponsored by two members, a primary and a secondary sponsor. Generally, the inmate must also serve a probationary term when his conduct is observed by Aryan Brotherhood members. If his conduct is satisfactory, the inmate is admitted to the AB. Once accepted, an AB member is required to commit any criminal act that the enterprise asks of him. An AB member pledges his life to the enterprise, and all AB members are men. The AB does not have a formal written code of conduct. Instead, there are unwritten rules of conduct that govern the behavior of its members. Most recently, 3 primary rules govern all the behavior of AB members. They are: do not cooperate with law enforcement, keep your word, never be a coward. Aside from these rules, AB members are required when ordered to kill without hesitation. Members who do not fulfill their obligations to the AB are subject to murder. AB members are also prohibited from engaging in other conduct, such as being involved ever in an SO offense, engaging in any man-to-man behavior, providing information to law enforcement, and incurring a drug debt to an inmate of another race while in prison. In addition to members, the enterprise also includes associates, who are people closely affiliated with the AB. Associates are required to follow the orders of the Aryan Brotherhood members. Associates who do not fulfill their obligations to the enterprise are subject to murder. The AB enforces its rules of conduct and promotes discipline among the enterprise by acts involving murder, extortion, and threatening those who either violate the rules or pose a threat to the enterprise. The AB also uses murder, the threat of murder, and assault to preserve, protect, and expand its position of power within the California prison system. Specifically, AB members believe that a prison stabbing committed by an AB member should be executed in a bloody and cruel manner so that it leaves a lasting impression on other inmates. And Youngster was all the way with the business. This AB belief stems from the reality that white inmates are a minority at every California prison. Therefore, AB ordered prison attacks, which tend to stand out as particularly gruesome, deter rival inmates from confronting the Enterprise members and associates. In other words, the AB's extreme violence has a purpose. It warns other would-be attackers that they risk severe retaliation if they attempt to violate the gang in any way. Prisoners and others who do not follow the orders of the AB are subject to retaliation, including physical assault or even murder, as is anyone who uses violence against an AB member. Prisoners who cooperate with law enforcement authorities are put in the hat, that is, marked for death. AB members use various symbols to signal their participation in the Enterprise. The symbols can appear in tattoos, drawings, and writings. The shamrock is the most prominent symbol used to signify membership in the AB. If an incarcerated inmate who is not a member of the Enterprise has a shamrock tattoo, members of the AB will require that inmate to remove or cover up the tattoo. Additional symbols demonstrating membership in the AB include Nazi symbols, the letters AB, numbers 1 and 2, representing the first two letters of the alphabet. The number 666, the number 88, representing the phrase Hail Hitler because it is the eighth letter in the alphabet. Number 14, referring to a 14-word mission statement for white supremacists. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. The slogan was coined by David Lane, a member of the Order. Lane would die in federal prison in 2007. The term reflects the primary worldview by some white gang members in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, that unless immediate action is taken, the white race is doomed to extinction by an alleged rising tide of color, purportedly controlled and manipulated by the Jewish people. Once accepted as an AB member, the inmate swore an oath of loyalty, pledging his life to the AB. There is no retirement from the AB. It is straight business for forever. When AB members were released from prison, they are required to remain loyal to the AB and to work to further the goals of the AB while in the community. Members are required to follow all orders of high-ranking members. In particular, members were required when ordered to kill without hesitation. They are also required to give false testimony in court on behalf of other members, including falsely denying under oath the very existence of the AB. Members who did not fulfill their obligations to the AB were subject to being murdered. The AB is and was comprised of several levels of members and associates. The top membership was comprised of commissioned members who controlled their respective factions. The next level was comprised of council members who controlled day-to-day workings of their respective factions. Members were used primarily as soldiers to carry out commission or council members' orders, as were associates. Originally, the AB did not have a leadership structure, but instead was governed by consensus. In 1982, inmates in the California faction of the AB, including Stinson and Griffin, met while incarcerated in the California Men's Colony in Chino and formed a 12-man California Council to govern the California faction's affairs. The members of the California Council then formed a 3-man California Commission, of which Griffin was a member, with authority over the California Council and all other California AB members. Well, had Chino, Stiffen, and Griffin memorized in the form of a kite, a prison note, an AB call to order in which they justified to a third member of the California Commission the need to have murdered an AB member who had failed to meet their expectations, and marked 2 other AB members or members of their families for execution for cooperating with law enforcement and against the AB. In 1989, according to the feds, Griffin named Stinson to the California Commission. Youngster had finally made it for his loyalty and love to the brand. This was now his life. In approximately 1980, with the blessings of the California faction of the AB, the members of the federal faction formed a 3-man federal commission with authority over the activities of the federal faction. In approximately 1993, the members of the federal commission formed a council reporting to the federal commission with authority over day-to-day operations of the federal faction. In both the California and federal factions of the AB, the commission in charge of a particular faction had final authority over all matters involving that faction. A murder of or assault on a member could be carried out only if it was authorized by the commission of the faction to which the member belonged, although the murder of a non-member did not require commission approval. Those people were fair game. If you were white and in prison, the AB wanted some of what you had. They controlled your life. In 2002, Stinson would be charged federally along with major players, T.D. Bingham, Barry Mills, Richard Loyal, Robert Lee Griffin, David Allen Chance, Cleo Roy, Glenn Richard Filkins, Christopher Overton Gibson. The federal government would now label Youngster as one of the big boys, and they were seeking the ultimate penalty, the one where they strap you to a chair and say goodbye. Their crimes, numerous racketeering-related crimes. The indictment read like a real gangster book. Count 1 set forth several overacts in furtherance of the conspiracy, including murder of Richard Barnes on February 13, 1983. The murder of Thomas Lamb on October 15, 1988. Murder of Stephen Clark, July 3rd, 1982. Murder of Richard Anderson, October 6, 1983. Attempted murder of Jeffrey Barnett on March 13, 1990. The attempted murder of Jimmy Lee Eanman on September 30th, 1993. Attempted murder of Joel Burkett, March 1st, 1992. Murder of Arthur Rufo, February 7th, 1996. Conspiracy to murder Frank Rapoli, 1991 through 1998. Conspiracy to murder Chris Cecil, June 17, 1994. And the murder of Aaron Marsh on July 25th, 1997. Count 2 would allege that Robert Lee Griffin, Stinson, and others murdered Arthur Rufo for the purpose of increasing their position in the AB in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1959. Count 3 alleged that Griffin, Stinson, and others murdered Aaron Marsh for the purpose of increasing their position in the AB in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1959. Murder and mayhem was the business at hand. If you fucked around, then you found out, and you found out the hard way. The government would say the AB sought to control illegal activities such as narcotics trafficking, gambling, and extortion within the California and federal prison systems, to protect and expand its power through the use of intimidation, violence, threats of violence, assaults, and murders, and to promote the AB and the activities of its members and associates. Members of the AB committed attempted and threatened to commit acts of violence, including murder and assault, to protect and expand the AB's criminal operations, promoted a climate of fear through violence and threats of violence, promulgated rules to be followed by all participants in the AB, including the rule that an AB member may not act as an informant for law enforcement authorities, enforced the rules of the AB and promoted discipline through murder, attempted murder, assault, and threatening those who violate rules or orders and who pose a threat to the AB, and generated income by engaging in illegal activities under the protection of the AB, including narcotics trafficking, bookmaking, extortion, robbery, contract murder, and by requiring that white inmates engage in profit-making activities in prison, including dealing in narcotics, pay taxes to the AB under the threat of violence. Members attempted to conceal from law enforcement the existence of the AB, the identity of its participants, and the ways in which it conducts its affairs. To do so, members communicated using codes and hidden messages, and used a network of AB members and associates outside of prison to relay messages to incarcerated members and their associates. As part of the California Council, Griffin and Stinson enacted a rule that if a member of the AB became a witness against the AB, a member of the witness's family would be taken out. At approximately the same time, the council, which included Stinson and Griffin, decided to have a relative of an AB member, Stephen Barnes, taken out because Barnes had testified against a member of the AB. And Stinson and Griffin believed that Stephen Barnes and his wife could not be killed because they were now in a witness protection program. But for the AB, someone had to pay the price for Richard's transgressions. In approximately February 1983, Griffin asked AB member Curtis Price to commit the murder and arranged to have firearms supplied to Price. Stinson gave Griffin the address of Stephen Barnes' father, Richard Barnes, and Griffin in turn gave this information to Price. On February 13, 1983, Price would tell Richard Barnes that this is the price for your sins of your son as he squeezed the trigger 3 times, all 3 shots to his dome, which led the homicide detectives described as an execution-type killing. Youngster was not done with business, at least not this business. Next on the list was Stephen Loser Clark, an AB member. The gang that he once loved would now be responsible for his demise. Clifford Smith, an early member of the gang, would be ordered to take out Stephen Clark for not complying with AB rules, and he would do so at Chino State Prison. He would later go from being a member to testifying during Youngster's federal trial, wearing prison scrubs and an eye patch that he slipped on and off during questioning. Smith described how the AB empowered a 3-man commission to oversee drug running and killings in prison nationwide, and developed a reading list for the prospective members, including writings of Plato and Machiavelli. Asked by a prosecutor what themes of the books were, he boiled the intended message down to being the alpha male, the archetype. Smith said he entered into prison in 1977 on an armed robbery conviction and joined the AB a year later. He participated in the stabbing of an inmate to impress the gang's leadership. He would say, "Some people are squeamish about that kind of stuff. I wanted to let them know I wasn't squeamish." He stabbed another man, he said, during a World Series game between the Dodgers and the New York Yankees. Steve Garvey hit a home run, he said, and as inmates leapt to their feet to cheer, he drove the blade in. The beef was over a stolen watch. It got me a seat at the table. In the summer of 1982, Smith said he stabbed Stephen Loser Clark 37 times, making sure to do it publicly to send a message. He said Clark was a drug addict which violated AB rules, and had called Smith a punk in front of Smith's daughter. "When needed be, we took a head," said Smith, who was sentenced to 36 years to life for Clark's murder. It got everyone else thinking about saying no to us. Once someone was in the gang, he said the rules forbade leaving except by death. There is no retirement. There is no, well, it's been fun, fellas, but I'm going to do something else. Smith said he dropped out of the gang because he refused an order to murder a man whose daughter sent Smith pictures and called him uncle. And now he would face his old friends and brothers. While Stinson and Griffin were members of the California Council, the council also ordered the murders of AB member Thomas Lamb for failing to carry out an order to commit a murder, and AB member Richard Anderson for providing information to law enforcement authorities. In July 1982, Stinson and Griffin sent a message to another California council member saying that there was a plan in place to murder Lamb. Lamb was subsequently murdered by AB members on October 15, 1988. In May 1983, the California Council, including Stinson and Griffin, ordered AB associate Rick Rose to murder Anderson. Following orders, Rose attempted to kill Anderson on May 24, 1983. By stabbing him, he came up short, but Anderson's luck would run out eventually. Anderson was subsequently murdered on October 6, 1983, following the orders of another high-ranking AB member from the federal faction. While Stinson and Griffin were members of the California Commission, the Commission also ordered the murders of AB member Arthur Rufo for violating AB rules, and AB member Aaron Marsh for failing to carry out an order to murder another inmate. In August 1995, Stinson and two other AB members ordered Brian Healy to take out Rufo. He would strangle Rufo to death on February 7, 1996. And Marsh was murdered by an AB member on July 25, 1997, pursuant to the order of the Commission that included Stinson and Griffin, according to the new federal indictment. While they were successful in putting people to sleep, they sometimes came up empty. In 1984, the Commission, including Griffin, ordered the murder of Jimmy Lee Eanman for assaulting an AB member. And in approximately April 1991, the California Commission, including Stinson and Griffin, ordered another AB member to deliver a message to the federal faction of the AB requesting that Eanman be killed. In September 1991, the California Commission, including Stinson and Griffin, sent word to another AB member that the Commission wanted Eanman killed. Based on an order from a high-ranking member of the federal AB faction, an AB member attempted to take Eanman out in September 93. In approximately 1986, the California Commission, including Griffin, ordered the murder of Joe Burkert for giving information to prison authorities about hidden weapons at Folsom State Prison. In 1991, April, the California Commission ordered another AB member to deliver a message to the federal faction of the AB, requesting that Burkett be killed. The Commission sent another request in approximately July 1991. And on March 1, 1992, based on an order from a high-ranking member of the federal AB faction, an AB member attempted to murder Burkett. June 1994, the feds say Stinson ordered AB member Jeffrey Rhodes to murder an AB associate named Chris Cecil, because Cecil failed to murder on behalf of the AB. Blood in, blood out. And if you fail to kill, then they will kill you. Do the mission or become the mission. June 1994, while in the law library of Pelican Bay State Prison, Rhodes was provided a knife by an AB member in order to kill Cecil. And on June 17, 1994, Stinson and two Aryan Brotherhood commissioners instructed Rhodes how to murder Cecil so that it appeared to be in self-defense. For all of these offenses, the government would seal youngster Stinson's fate. The prosecutor's centerpiece was Griffin and youngster's own criminal admissions contained in a kite, according to the indictment, to fellow AB member Commissioner Robert Crane in San Quentin, handwritten by Stinson and Griffin, which outlined the AB's call to arms, its strategy for attacking rival gangs, its justification for the recent murder of fellow AB member Stephen Clark for failing to comply with AB rules, and the existence of a plan to kill at least two AB members or members of their families, Stephen Barnes and Tommy Lamb, for violating those AB rules. The government had pulled back on the death penalty for youngster, but that did not mean that the U.S. Attorney's Office was not going hard to make sure he never left prison. 11 former friends and convicts would show up at the trial. Of the convicts, 5 had testified in a prior related AB trial in Santa Ana regarding the federal AB, for which they had already received placement in the Federal Witness Security Program or similar security measures. Glenn West, Kevin Roche, Clifford Smith, Ronald Criswell, and Sidney Griffin. 3 had not yet received substantial government benefits: Michael Contreras, Anthony Lakea, and Michael Masterson. 1 had already testified in state court regarding the same racketeering offense: Brian Healy. 1 had agreed to cooperate as a result of a federal indictment: John Harper. And 1 had not received any government benefit and was out of custody at the time he agreed to testify for the government: David Buckethead Griffin. The government's witnesses were subject to extensive cross-examination by 5 defense attorneys, even former San Quentin Warden Robert Ayers and former Pelican Bay Assistant Warden Barry O'Neill. Despite all of the badgering, the defense attorneys could not save youngster or any of the men on trial. In the end, Youngster was convicted and sentenced to life on the federal level. That would not stop his reign of terror. Now, life as he knew it, forever gone. The government will be back again, this time in June 2024. But what more could they do to a man that had spent his entire life in prison, knowing that he would never see the streets again? The new indictment would outline the same names, all men beaten by the system. Kenny Bash, Youngster, a.k.a. Pops. Kenneth Johnson, Francis Clement, Jason Beaver Weaver, Waylon Pitchford. Andrew Misfit Collins, Derek Pup Smith. Brandon Bannock, Justin Gray, Evan Perkins, a.k.a. Soldier. More men and more fates to be sealed. On the menu, once again, blood in, blood out. 6 more bodies attributed to the gang in this new prison indictment in June 2024. Whether in prison or on the street, if they want you, they can get you. On January 24th, 2016, the same day the indictment says a person was killed on the orders of Johnson and Clement. 30-year-old Brandon Lowry was stabbed to death in Kern Valley State Prison, allegedly by his cellmate. Hugo Yogi Pinnell, a reputed black guerrilla family member and member of the infamous San Quentin Six, was stabbed to death on a Sacramento prison yard, allegedly by AB member Jason Beaver Weaver. And Waylon Pitchford. On August 12, 2015, the same day the indictment says, one of the victims was killed. At around 10 p.m. on March 8, 2022, Ronnie Paul Enos, Jr., 47, and James Yago, 44, were gunned down on the 200 block of Ridgeway Street in Pomona, authorities say. They are the only double homicide victims on that day in Los Angeles County, according to media reports. Even the Russians could get it. 2 men lay on the sidewalk of a darkened street in Lomita lifeless. One carried a gun he had no opportunity to use. The other was tattooed with symbols of the Russian underworld. Both had been hit a single time in the dome. Neither Alan Roshinsky nor Ruslan Magatovs had ties to 255th Street, where sheriff deputies found their bodies at 1:30 a.m. on Sunday in 2020. The new indictment says the hit was ordered from hundreds of miles away inside a prison. But how do free Russian mobsters collide with Youngster and the rest of his crew? Each had his own dark past. The pimp, the strong arm from the Israeli mob. The polite inmate who tried to kill a deputy, the teenage murderer who cut out part of an informant's tongue. Roshinsky, 36, had been shot behind his left ear. Beneath his jeans and Puma sweatshirt, a coroner's investigator noted tattoos. Stars on the knees, 4 dots on the back of the left hand, with a 5th dot in the middle. His markings are significant in Russian prison culture. An organized crime figure who served time in the Russian penal system told the Times. The source who requested anonymity, the government would be back again, this time in June 2024. But what more could they do to a man that had spent his entire life in prison, knowing that he would never see the streets again? The new indictment would outline the same names as all men beaten by the system. Kenny Bash, Youngster, a.k.a. Pops. Kenneth Johnson, Francis Clement. Jason Beaver Weaver, Waylon Pitchford. Andrew Misfit Collins, Derek Pup Smith. Brandon Bannock, Justin Gray, Evan Perkins, a.k.a. Soldier. More men and more fates to be sealed. On the menu once again, blood in, blood out. 6 more bodies attributed to the gang. Whether in prison or on the street, if they want you, they can get you. The new indictment in June 2024 would not name the specifics. But when looking at the indictment, the specifics come to light. On January 24, 2016, the same day the indictment says a person was killed on the orders of Johnson and Clement, 30-year-old Brandon Lowry was stabbed to death in Kern Valley State Prison, allegedly by his cellmate. Hugo Yogi Pinnell, a reputed black guerrilla family member and member of the infamous San Quentin Six, was stabbed to death on a Sacramento prison yard, allegedly by Aryan Brotherhood members Jason Beaver Weaver and Waylon Pitchford. On August 12, 2015, the same day the indictment says one of the victims was killed. At around 10 p.m. on March 8, 2022, Ronnie Paul Enos Jr., 47, and James Yago, 44, were gunned down on the 200 block of Ridgeway Street in Pomona, authorities would say. They were the only double homicide victims on that day in Los Angeles County. So while the indictment doesn't tell you who's who, the facts in the news will. Even the Russians could get it. 2 men lay on the sidewalk of a darkened street in Lomita lifeless. One carried a gun he had no opportunity to use. The other was tattooed with symbols of the Russian underworld. Both had been hit a single time in the dome. Neither Alan Roshinsky nor Ruslan Magatovs had ties to 255th Street, where sheriff deputies found their bodies at 1:30 a.m. one Sunday in 2020. The new indictment says the hit was ordered from hundreds of miles away inside a prison. But how do free Russian mobsters collide with Youngster and the rest of his crew? Each of the Russians had his own dark past. One, the pimp. The other, the strong arm for an Israeli mob. The polite inmate who tried to kill a deputy. the teenage murderer who cut out part of an informant's tongue. Roshinsky, 36, had been shot behind his left ear. Beneath his jeans and Puma sweatshirt, a coroner's investigator noted tattoos. There were stars on his knees, 4 dots on the back of a left hand with a 5th dot in the middle. His markings are significant in Russian prison culture. An organized crime figure who served time in the Russian penal system would tell the news. The source for fear of retaliation said the hand tattoo was a common mark of a prisoner. The 4 dots represent walls. The 5th, the inmate constrained by them. But the stars on the knees were much different. It would signify a refusal to kneel before authorities such as police or judges. And it could be worn only by high-ranking Russian convicts, this source would tell the news. Roshinsky had done prison time, but in California, and for crimes that didn't suggest a profile of an upper echelon criminal. Roshinsky served a year for trafficking women in Hollywood. Prosecutors haven't revealed the suspected motives for the 6 killings within the indictment, including those of the Russians, nor have they given the public, or even defense attorneys, a full picture of how the defendants were linked to the crimes. But some clues have leaked out through the court filings. Sheriff detectives surveying the dark street in Lomita were baffled about the Russians. They were confused. Mogadov had a Tarazan address. Roshinsky was last known to be living near San Diego. It remains unknown why they were at the location, who they were there to meet, a detective wrote in a search warrant affidavit. A month later, they got a call from an LAPD narcotics officer. An informant would claim to have overheard a man named Justin Gray saying he got those 2 Russian guys in Lomita. According to the source, Gray had been promised membership in the AB in exchange for the killings. Whether it's true or not remains to be proven. The informant provided a phone number for Gray, and records show that Roshinsky had called Gray's phone 3 times in the hour before he was killed, according to the affidavit. A federal grand jury in Fresno indicted Gray on murder charges in 2023. Accused of ordering the hits were 2 reputed members of the AB, Kenneth Kenwood Johnson and Francis Frank Clement, both close to Youngster. Along with the killings in Lomita, Clement is charged with ordering other bodies in the indictment. Youngster A.K. Pops is charged with conspiring to take out victim 15 and victim 16 in March 2020. This life, while you might smile, sometimes deep inside, you're crying. What has gang life really got you? It has gotten you nowhere. Heartache and pain. Youngster went to jail as that, a youngster. And now, he'll leave this world as Pops. This is your life to live or lose. Gang, gang.